Good evening, people. Thank you for listening to J-Ho the Sports Dude, and thank you for listening to my UMass Boston Sports podcast. All right, thank you. Let's turn this off. All right, then. Thank you for being listening to the podcast. We got a very special episode today. We got the Bruins, we got the Red Sox, we got the Celtics, and we got Patriots talk a little bit, and we got some other stuff. But first, I have a very special guest. So we have my pal Kurt Keats from the hockey team. Would you like to introduce yourself, Kurt?
Hey, guys. Yeah, thanks for having me on, Johnny. Gonna be a lot of fun.
All right, then. So how was the week, by the way?
Week's been great. A little hectic. School's coming to a close here, so just trying to get some stuff taken care of there. And yeah, no, happy it's the weekend. I just want to introduce my other buddy who I brought on the show here. This is Will Benoit. Will, you want to say hi quickly?
Hi. No. Hi.
Will's a big Boston sports fan as well as a huge UMass athletics fan. So we've been buddies for a couple years now, and I'm glad he could join us in studio.
I can turn on the other mic if you want. So.
Sorry.
Here, you could speak into this one. It should work.
Hello?
Yep. All right, then. So, I had a pretty good week. Had a few exams that were rough. I actually, I saw Avengers Endgame yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I won't spoil it for people that are planning on seeing it, but I love the movie, and it was a very emotional roller coaster, and I would recommend people see it. So.
Yeah. I'm not a huge Avengers guy, but I have heard good things. The one thing I am in the midst of right now is Game of Thrones.
Oh, yeah, me too.
I'm not quite caught up, but I'm almost there, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. Are you planning on seeing the Avengers Endgame?
Yeah.
All right, then. So why don't we let's talk about UMass hockey for a little bit. So you guys had a great year. Win 31-10 this year. We're able to make the finals against Denver. And lost the finals to Minnesota Duluth. So I have a few questions to ask you, and if you want to chime in, you can if you want. So going into this year, what were your guys' expectations as a team?
It was kind of a year where there was quite a few question marks for us. I mean, we knew we'd have a good team, but it was just a matter of kind of getting over that hump with guys like Kale and Mario and Johnny Leonard and stuff. We knew we'd be, fighting for a playoff spot near the tops of Hockey East, but I don't think anybody really expected the year that we did have. But, the second we stepped on campus in August, we knew it was a special group, and then once we got on the ice, started practicing as a team, I think, it kind of hit that we could probably do something special this year.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, I don't think we really expected cause you guys came out of the gates and just started winning just right away. So it was definitely interesting. When did you guys realize that this was a special team that can go far? Was it in practice? Was it when you guys started the season? Was it did the coach inspire you guys, or when did you guys realize this was something special going on?
Yeah, so like I kind of said, when we all got here and started skating and working out together as a team, we knew we had a really good group. And then that first weekend, I believe we played RPI in a home-and-home, swept RPI. So, that was kind of a telling sign, but, I mean, RPI wouldn't go on to be one of the higher-end teams in college hockey, but I think it was the second week of the season we went into Ohio State, who was ranked number 1 in the country at the time. And the first night, I think we beat them 6-3. So, and then the second night, they scored late to beat us 2-1. So I think it was at that moment in Ohio State where we were like, wow, this is a pretty good group, and we can do some damage this year.
Sounds awesome. So are there any games that you went to? Can you remind me name again?
Will, I am.
Will, okay. Sorry about that. So, any games you went to?
Yeah, Will was at a couple games. I remember the one game he came down in the dressing room after. I forget which game that was at. Maybe after Quinnipiac or something.
Quinnipiac.
But Will's a mainstay at the UMass hockey games and the UMass
That's awesome.
athletic games. Yeah. So it's great to have him out.
Yeah. So I guess this will be for both of you guys. Like, what's it like seeing the Mullen Center packed and like rocking when you guys were playing? Because I've been here for a few years, and when I went to hockey games, it was usually pretty quiet, and like if you could get in pretty easily. But I remember in November in December the lines were packed, and like it was hard to get in. So what was it like seeing the place like rocking?
It's epic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a senior, so I've been around for 4 years, and I remember those years just like you do, Johnny, where, you know, there were maybe 1,500 people in the building that holds about 9,000, so it seemed pretty empty. But, you know, this year, once we kind of caught fire and started to win some games, and I think once people figured out we were legit, they started to show up in masses, and I remember that home game against Quinnipiac where we were ranked number 1 in the country at the time. I was driving to the rink around 5:15, 5:30, and the game was at 7:30. And I remember driving past the front of the Mullen Center, and the line was all the way to the practice Mullins. So that you know, fired me up. And then just to step out there in front of a sold-out barn, it's pretty unbelievable. I remember freshman year, I said to myself, I better see this place packed at least once or twice, and then turns out this year, near the end of the year, it was packed almost every game. So it was a pretty cool feeling, and I hope students continue to show up for those games in coming years.
Yeah, I hope when we both graduate, the team continues to do well and this place continues.
Absolutely,
to sell out.
and not just hockey too. I mean, basketball, women's basketball, football, lacrosse. You know, if the students really start to support the teams, I think it'll be a lot of fun for.
Yeah, and soccer too.
Yeah, exactly.
Women's soccer too.
Yes, of course.
Will loves all UMass sports. So, but yeah, I mean, if everybody comes out and supports all these teams, I think it'll be a lot of fun, not only for the players, but as well as for all the students.
Yeah, I actually wanted to talk about your coach, Greg Carville, who's been around the team since 2016. What has he meant to you guys and the team? What has he meant to you guys, or you personally, and the team as a whole?
Yeah, so Carv came in at the end of my freshman year, and then made some big changes. But you know, right from the second he stepped foot on campus, we knew that you know, he was serious about winning, and that's really all you can ask for in a coach. He pushed all the right buttons, I thought, brought in a lot of unbelievable kids who I'm honored to call great friends, and this year as well, like, our relationship with him grew a lot closer. I think now that he kind of has his finger on the team, and a lot of the guys are some of his own recruits, you know, the team's a lot closer, and that's you know, credit to him.
Sounds good. Yeah, I definitely feel like he was a big part of why you guys like played so well this year. So
yeah, absolutely. I think he won National Coach of the Year, and then yeah, his name. Obviously, there's quite a few NHL head coaching jobs opened up. I think his name was kind of floating around for a few of those, but you know, I think he'll stay. Hopefully, he stays for a couple more years and can bring UMass a national championship.
Yeah, of course. And also, obviously, when people think of this UMass team, they think Cal McCarr. So I would say he was probably the face of the UMass hockey team. So I was going to ask, what was it like playing with Cal McCarr, and how was it like seeing him develop as a player?
Will, what do you think of him as a player?
He's a great guy because he's an awesome dude.
Yeah, Will kind of hit it on the head there. He's as great a hockey player he is, he's an even better person, better friend. So just, you know, to see him come in last year, and you know, he had a great year last year, but maybe not the year he wanted to, and then this year he was just exploded and was unbelievable. By far the best player in college hockey this year, and I think he's turning a lot of heads at the NHL level too. It's only a matter of time before he's running Colorado's first unit, and as you guys saw when he scored in his first game there. But yeah, just an unbelievable kid and a great friend.
Yeah, definitely. He probably the best player this year in college hockey, and it was so much fun to watch him grow as a player. And
did you have the chance to meet him?
I don't. we might have crossed paths. I don't remember if I've met him.
You would have seen him though.
Yeah, I
Parkinson's.
probably seen him
Yeah.
plenty of times. I don't know if we've ever really met, but definitely a player that I have a lot of respect for, and it's pretty cool that he's now playing for the Colorado Avalanche, and he helped the team move on against the Calgary Flames. I heard he's actually from Calgary, right?
Yeah, so that would have been a pretty special homecoming for him. I talked to him briefly the other day, and he said it was awesome.
Yeah.
I think he had about 25, 30 friends and family in the stands, so would have cost him a couple bucks for sure to get them some tickets. But no, so his first game he came in, I believe it was game 4. They beat, game 3. They beat Calgary handily that night. Then game 4 they won in overtime, and then game 5 they went back to Calgary. So that was probably a pretty special homecoming for him.
Yeah, he was able to actually get a goal too.
Yeah, his first game 3, we were all watching over at my place there, and he buried, and we went nuts. We were so happy for him.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, his first NHL game, and he scores his first goal. Yeah, I think it was actually the first defenseman to make his debut in the playoffs and score in his debut. So. Yeah.
So yeah, definitely that was. I think I was at Porta or something like that, and I saw it. It was awesome. Actually, I might have been doing the
R.I.P. Porta.
Yeah, whatever. Whatever. Yeah, I think I was doing the podcast, and I saw it like all over the internet. It was crazy.
Yeah, and Twitter blew up, especially UMass Twitter. So
yeah, and the Avalanche are playing the San Jose Sharks next, and I think they have a really good shot at beating them too. So
yeah, I don't know when this podcast is gonna come out, but that game's actually tonight, I think at 10 p.m. So that should be a great series, and I'm looking forward to watching Kale do his thing.
Yeah, and so I wanted to go a little bit into the actual tournament, if you don't mind. So
absolutely.
So obviously, what was your mindset going into the tournament as a team?
So I don't know if you were following along, but we went into the Hockey East semifinals at the Garden there against Boston College, and we didn't play our best.
I believe you lost 3-0.
Yeah, we lost 3-0, and it wasn't a great showing for us. We didn't play our best, and we knew that. And
I think Coach said that it was probably the worst performance of the year. So.
Yeah, so I don't know whether it was the big stage or not. So that was our last game before heading into the NCAA tournaments, which our regional was in Manchester, and we kind of took a step back, met as a team, discussed that Boston College game, what kind of went wrong. And I think, it was just being on the big stage, the Garden, for the first time. And, a lot of guys were nervous. That first game went into overtime, which pushed us back. So we were kind of sitting in the room just waiting. And, we put that behind us and decided to simplify our game a little bit heading into the first regional game against Harvard. And I think that really helped us. I think it, simplified everything, and guys were a lot less nervous. And came into that first game against Harvard. They were good. They had a disallowed goal early, and then we kind of woke up, started taking it to them, and then same thing the next night against Notre Dame. I thought we came out great, looked really good, fast. We were all over them, and then and then semifinals against Denver.
Yeah, let's talk about that Denver game. So I remember watching that game, and you guys came out swinging like with a bunch of power play goals. We're able to get
that's true.
Yeah, able to get a 3-1 lead, but I think as the game wore on, it seemed like Denver was really starting to pick up, and unfortunately, you guys, the team, they were able to come back and tie the game. So I was curious, going into overtime, what were your guys' mindset? Because Denver kind of picked it up later in the game, and it seemed like they had the momentum going into overtime.
Yeah, so in that game, Denver scored first on the power play, and then our power play connected a couple times, went up 3-1, then we got into some penalty trouble in the third. I thought we made the mistake of kind of going on our heels instead of staying on our toes, and Denver was kind of all over us. I forget what the penalties were. I think it was like almost 28 minutes or something to to 10, but you know, you can't give a team with so much experience like Denver that many chances. You know, and we knew that going into the tournament that Denver, Minnesota, Duluth, and Providence had all, you know, won it in the last 5 years, and Duluth had been in their third final in the last 3 years, and Denver, last 2 out of the 3, they'd gone to the final. So, you know, we knew they had the experience advantage on us, and you know, I think that kind of maybe got to us in the third period, but you know, went to overtime. We just kind of said, you know, we can't lose this game. You know, everything we've done all year, this isn't when it ends for us. This isn't when it ends. And Chowsy comes around the net, pops it up high to Mark Del Gaizo, and that's a moment I'll never forget.
Yeah, what was that like? I'm sure that was definitely one of probably the highlight of your careers.
Yeah, absolutely. I've watched that goal so many times over. I was on the bench for it. As soon as I saw it go in, I jumped off the bench, jumped in the air. Mark kind of jumped into my hands, and there's a couple pictures of it. Actually, it's a pretty cool moment, and definitely one I'll remember.
Yeah, Will, do you have any thoughts about that moment?
Yeah. It was awesome.
Were you watching the game, Will?
Yeah.
Where were you watching it?
In Belchertown.
All right.
Yeah. Will was at home, and Will was one of the first to text and call after the game. So yeah. Appreciate his support for sure.
Yeah.
I said, UMass kicked some ass.
All right then.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. They did. I think we were all at Spoke, and the place went crazy when that goal went in. So
yeah.
And so you guys played in the final. Unfortunately, you guys lost to Minnesota Duluth. And so what do you think went wrong in that game, and tell me what your thoughts about that game are.
So Minnesota Duluth, as well as Denver, for those who aren't super familiar with college hockey, they both play in the NCHC conference, which is a really good conference. And, you know, we like to think Hockey East is one. They like to think NCHC is one. So, you know, the leagues are probably 1 or 2 in either order. Could be up for debate. So those are just teams we don't see a ton. And, you know, Duluth had beat St. Cloud in the NCHC playoffs, so we knew they were, you know, a force to be reckoned with. And they handled Providence pretty easily in the semifinal. And then, you know, we hadn't watched a ton of video of them heading into that Saturday championship game. But, you know, we knew they were a powerhouse. And they were all over us right from the first puck drop. And, you know, I thought there was times in the game where we took it to them a little bit, and then they would come back and shove it down our throats. But, you know, just really proud of the guys. And obviously we didn't have Bobby Trevino for that game after he was suspended after the semifinal. So, you know, he's a huge part of our forward group. So I think that hurt us up front a little bit. But, you know, just to get to that stage and have that experience, I think will go a long way for UMass hockey in the coming years. And when they get back there, they'll have that experience, and they'll be ready.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. As a UMass student, as a UMass hockey fan, it was tough. But I gotta say, I was really happy for you guys for getting that far, because I can't think of a team that has done this well at UMass sports that I can remember probably since the Calipari teams, maybe in the 90s.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. And, you know, it's been great just to see, you know, people kind of come out and support. You know, like we talked about freshman and sophomore year, a lot of people, you know, didn't really take UMass athletics or UMass sports teams seriously. And had a lot of athletes with various teams come up and, you know, kind of thank us. And, you know, I think just not only does it benefit athletes, but it benefits all students and the university to get that kind of national recognition in any sport, and you know, really have people talking about the University of Massachusetts. I think it's awesome for all of us involved.
Yeah, and I think I mean the lacrosse teams and the soccer teams have had success, so I probably shouldn't. I should mention that, but I mean, to see the way that everybody rallied around the hockey team that was really special, and I'm very happy very happy and proud about that.
Yeah, it was very special, and something that doesn't go unappreciated from us players is we don't get to say thank you often, but for anybody listening, and you, Johnny, thank you guys so much for the support all year, and not only this year, my last 4 years, and it's been unbelievable.
Yeah. All right. So this is the last question I'm going to ask.
Sure.
So what was your favorite moment of the year, and what will you remember this year for?
So many memories. That Quinnipiac game is one that sticks out in my head for sure. Like I said, driving to the rink, us winning it. The Boston College game, Glock scored, I think, with 3 seconds left at home to win that one over BC. All the NCAA games were awesome, but it's hard to not pick that overtime winner by Mark Del Gaizo against Denver. Like I said earlier, I've watched that over and over again, and it'll probably never get old for any UMass sports fan. So if I had to go with one, it'll be that one.
Yeah. So Will, how will you remember this team this year?
They're good, and I love them so much. Go Bobby!
Yeah, Will's grown to be pretty good friends with a couple of us, and a couple of us are moving on, but luckily he's made some buddies with some of the freshmen, so they'll take good care of him for coming years.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you for answering the questions. All right.
Of course.
Yeah. All right, then why don't we take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk a little about the NHL playoffs.
Go UMass Hockey!
All right, welcome back. I'm still here with Kurt and Will. So why don't we go into the NHL playoffs? So the Bruins played the Toronto Maple Leafs, and they were able to tie the series after that pretty dreadful Game 3. They were able to win 6-4. David Pastrnak had 2 goals. He finally showed up out of hibernation. Brad Marchand had a goal and 2 assists. The Maple Leafs had 42 shots, but the Bruins had 31 shots. And the Bruins power play was really, I think, the difference in that game. The Bruins had 2 power plays, and they had 2 power play goals. And in the Game 5, you would hope that the Bruins would be able to take that into... they were able to take advantage of the home ice. But unfortunately, that was not the case. The first 2 periods were basically defensive hockey in which nobody scored. And then in the third period, the Maple Leafs were able to score 2 goals, and that was basically all she wrote. Both the goaltenders had pretty good games. The Bruins were just incredibly sloppy with the puck. They had 18 takeaways. They had 13 giveaways, and the Maple Leafs had 18 turnovers. So that was really ugly. They took away the home ice advantage. And so Game 6, in my opinion, they had to win that. The Maple Leafs had to win that game, or else they would basically be done in Boston. So the Bruins just came out of the gate and destroyed them. Bruins had 41 shots. Maple Leafs had 24 shots. Bruins were able to get 2 goals on power play opportunities, and Maple Leafs they had a bit of a fighting back in the third period when they scored a goal, but they were just never really able to get much traction, and the Bruins were able to put them away. Game 7, Bruins came out swinging. They were able to get up 2-1, but in the second period, Toronto seemed to fight back, and they were able to get a goal, but they weren't able to get anything else. And then the third period, they were not able to. They were definitely fighting back, but then the Bruins scored a goal, and then were able to put it away with 2 empty net goals. Sean Corrales had a goal and assist, and Joakim Nordstrom had a goal and assist, and Tuukka Rask, I thought, played a really good game. So, So what do you think were some of the keys to... What was your takeaway from this series, based on what you've seen?
I saw most of the Bruins-Leafs games. I thought, it's playoff hockey. You know, anybody can win, and I think the Bruins, on paper, probably aren't as skilled as the Maple Leafs. Maple Leafs have a lot of star talent up front. The one game I didn't see was the one where Nazem Kadri cross-checked. I forget who he cross-checked, but he ended up getting suspended for it. And it was the second year in a row he's been suspended in the playoffs. So
I believe that was game 2.
okay, yeah. So and then he was suspended
and
for the.
I think I know why you were not able to watch that game, because I'm pretty sure that was the same game
as the Saturday night,
the national championship. So
yeah. So he's a big part of their lineup up front, and to lose a guy like that for the rest of the series, I think hurts. I think the Bruins are just better built for playoff hockey. I mean, they're skilled but gritty. I mean, you look at their skill players with Marchand, Bergeron, and Pasternak. You know, they're so skilled, but they can play any style of game, and I think that's where they kind of took it to the Leafs a bit. Where you look at guys on the Leafs like William Nylander, who didn't really show up, and for a guy who held out as long as he did at the beginning of the season, it was a pretty disappointing year for Nylander. And then Babcock, I know, is taking a lot of heat for the loss in Toronto.
Yeah, I think they want to hang him in Toronto.
Yeah, so it was funny. I saw a tweet about it. It was
and also that I don't know if you saw it, but that last press conference in which Babcock basically seemed to kind of put the blame on everybody else didn't really, I don't think, really helped him.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. A leader shouldn't be doing that. That's what the tweet I saw. It said Babcock saying, "We need more," and then they kind of asked Dubas what happened, and Dubas said, "I need to be better." So, I think as a leader, you should probably take onus on, on what went wrong, even if it wasn't totally your fault. But the one thing a lot of Leafs fans were upset about too is the fact that Austin Matthews, I think he only played like 18 minutes or something in Game 7, and that's your best player and, one of the top players in the world, and for him to be playing as much as, your fourth liners, I think.
Yeah. Like, Babcock's a great coach, but I think at times he can be a little stubborn with his lines and, like, all that stuff. So I can understand. Yes. I wouldn't fire him. I think next year, if the same thing happens, I would consider it. If they got swept, I would agree that he should probably be fired, but they went to Game 7 against the Bruins, and the Bruins are a very good team.
Yeah. Babs is one of the most sought-after coaches in hockey, so I don't think you let him go. But then again, when you look at these coaches, like, the game is changing. Like, the once crack-the-whip style of coaching is just no longer. I think, everybody can, with video in today's day and age, no coach is running something that, everybody else doesn't see, and I think it's just about a coach that develops these relationships with players, and players wanting to play for their coach. And I think there's more and more players coaches in the league, and I don't know if Babcock is one of them, but I saw another stat too. When the Red Wings won one of their cups under Mike Babcock, their first line, which had Pavel Datsyuk that year, played in the playoffs, played one more shift than their fourth line. So, it just goes to show that Babcock likes rolling all four, and in some situations I think that's good, but like a time in the third period there when they're down to the Bees by down 2-1 and then 3-1, that's when you gotta really roll on and lean on your big guns.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah. So looking at this series, there were a few things I think the Bruins did really well to win. One, the power play. I think when they hit on the power play, they were able to take advantage against the Maple Leafs, and they were able to win the games. Because, Toronto's power play penalty kill was just awful.
Yeah,
so.
Well, the Bruins power play, I think it was something like 7 for 16, like 43 or 44%. And I think that was, they were talking about on Spit and Chicklets, that was one of the highest power play percentages in a series ever. I think it was like top 5, so it's pretty crazy. And just in those tight games, you get a power play and you capitalize, like that's usually a difference maker. So special teams is so critical in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I thought especially in Game 7, I really felt like the fourth line really stepped up, because I mean, like you mentioned before, you know what Pastrnak can do, you know what Bergeron can do, you know what Brad Marchand can do. But I really like that the fourth line was able to step up. And of course, you know this. Hockey is a team sport. Everybody needs to contribute.
Yeah, absolutely. I forget who's on that fourth line. I think it's Noel Achari. He played at Providence, and then I'm not.
Sean Corrally.
Yeah.
I think Nordstrom's on that line.
Yeah, so a couple huge goals for them, and we've talked about this often with UMass hockey. Like, 4 is just a number. Whether you're 1 or 4. I mean, the hockey gods don't care. You get a chance to bury the puck, go bury it.
Yeah, and so I'll say this about Game 7. So I have been, like many Boston fans, I have been one to be critical of Tuukka Rask when he's played awful and he allows like 4 goals or something like that, and we want his head. But I thought in Game 7 and many times this series, Tuukka Rask had played really well. So he blocked 32 of 33 shots, and so I thought he played really well in the game.
Yeah, I mean, Boston, it's a tough city to be a goaltender in, that's for sure, especially when you're not playing.
It's a tough city to be an athlete in.
Yeah, well, not as of recently.
That's true.
Because all they do is win games. But, I thought he was excellent in Game 7. Definitely outplayed his counterpart there across the ice, Freddie Anderson. I thought Frederik Anderson had a tough series, giving up, 1 or 2 weak ones a game, and that... I think it was his first one. He gave up in Game 7, the short side goal. That can happen, especially in a Game 7. But, I thought Tuukka was awesome, and hopefully Boston fans kind of give him a little bit more leash.
Yeah, well, I mean, Boston fans, we can be very critical. Will, do you have any thoughts on this, on the Boston Bruins?
Who are they playing tomorrow?
Well, they actually... yesterday had played the first game against the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Who won?
Boston
Bruins
in overtime.
In overtime.
What did you think about the series against the Leafs? Do you watch any of it, Will?
Yeah.
What did you think?
Love Boston Bruins.
Yeah.
Go. What's his name? Bergeron.
Will's a big Bergeron fan, clearly.
Yeah. Who doesn't
and
love
number 33.
Chara?
Yeah.
He's a captain.
Yeah.
Yes, Chara is the captain of the Bruins.
Yeah.
I like him.
Yeah, I have a jersey of him.
Yeah.
I'm sure you see me wear it around. So.
Yeah, I think everybody that goes to UMass has seen you wear that thing around.
Yeah. Before we go into the Blue Jackets series for a little bit, let's talk about probably one of the biggest upsets in sports history. What happened this week? The Blue Jackets swept the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be the other way around. In fact, I'll just say right now, my NHL picks were horrible.
Well, I think everybody's picks were brutal. Just, the amount of upsets, and that speaks volumes to the league and where the league is at. You look at the NBA playoffs, I think there's going to be one Game 7 tomorrow night or whatever, San Antonio and Denver. But other than that, it's been, sweeps or 4-1, 4-2, And just in the NHL playoffs, I mean, I think there was all upsets except for maybe two series. So, that's what makes the NHL playoffs so fun to watch. Is absolutely anything can happen on any night. And yeah, Columbus, they went down 3-1 in the first period of Game 1. Tampa comes down, hits the crossbar. Columbus comes the other way and scores 3-1, 3-2. I think they went on to win that game 4-3 or 5-3 or 5-4, but and then that was basically like a huge turning point in the series. Tampa hitting that crossbar, and then they just never looked the same after that. Game 2, Columbus came out and routed them, and then same thing at home. The games were a little tighter, but they lost. I forget who. One of their big guns kind of got suspended for.
Kucherov.
Yeah, Kucherov got suspended, and that really hurt him, but. Yeah, it was absolutely crazy.
But before we go more, so after the series was over, Tampa Bay decided to put out this tweet about the team. And why don't we put on some sad violin music as I read this in the background. So, this is what the tweet said. We don't have any words. and we know you don't want to hear them. We understand your anger and frustration, your sadness, everything you're feeling. We get this. This isn't the ending we imagined, and certainly not the one we wanted. Thank you for being there the entire way. Yeah, whatever. Well, yeah, whatever.
Sorry.
What? I mean, I don't know what you say. I mean, probably nothing would be fine. I don't think they want to hear anything. The Tampa Bay fans want to hear anything, but whatever. Yeah. And I also think it's kind of interesting that they were the first team to go into the playoffs, and then they were the first team to get out. So
yeah, I think there's something to be said about playing meaningless games at the end of the season. Like, obviously, it's great to get in, and it's great to secure that. But, for the last month, Tampa was playing meaningless games, and they were still winning because, they were relying on skill, and then, they kind of cruised into the playoffs, and I think they thought it was going to be a cakewalk clearly, and Columbus showed up and, barely snuck their way in within the last couple games of the season, and, they had been playing playoff hockey for the last month, and, I think that really showed in that series.
Yeah, and like I said before, I think is at least in my lifetime, and I know a bit about I know some NHL history, so I think this might be the biggest upset in NHL playoff history, and this is, in my opinion, a top 5 upset in sports history of all time, because like Tampa Bay, they were tied with I believe the 95 Red Wings for the most wins, and this series was not that close. I mean,
that's true.
They got swept.
Yeah.
And after game 1, when they were up 3-0, guess how much Lightning have been outscored? 19-5.
Wow.
They were outscored 19-5 after getting up 3-0 in game 1.
And one of the most prolific offenses in recent NHL history. That's insane.
Yeah. And this was actually the first series win by the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Yeah, I knew that.
So pretty good way to go in and win a series. So before we get into the Lightning, and don't worry, I'll tear the Red Lightning to pieces, but I really wanted to give some credit to the Blue Jackets, because a lot of people have rightfully so been focused more on the Lightning, but I feel like we should give some credit to the Blue Jackets, because I really feel like they were a really talented team that kind of underachieved a bit this year. I know they made some big moves at the trade deadline to get some pieces so they can compete for a Stanley Cup. And I thought some big players stepped up for them. So Matt Duchene had 4 goals and 4 assists. He had 7 points. Panarin had 5 points. Zach Werenski had 5 points. Seth Jones had 4. And Scott Herring, Cam Atkinson had 4 points. Like, a lot of their players really stepped up. And like you said before, they really fought their ways. So it was like they were playing playoff games before the playoffs even started. Yeah.
A lot of people criticized them when they made some moves at the deadline. And, I remember their GM was quoted saying, he was basically saying, if I sell at the deadline, because so it's Panarin and Bobrovsky that there was talks that they're going to leave next year as they're on the last years of their deal. So he said, if I make moves at the deadline and sell instead of buy, then it's just, everybody will say, this is the same old Columbus Blue Jackets team, selling, wait for next year, be patient, wait for next year. He's like, the Blue Jackets been saying that for 15, 20 years. He's like, when are we going to be buyers? And, he went after it at the deadline, and, I really hope it pays off for them.
Yeah, and I think the Blue Jackets, they had a great game plan against the Lightning. Be physical, frustrate them, put their star players in corners, and, not let them make a big impact. And I felt like they really frustrated the Lightning. I think that really showed, especially with Kucherov, getting a cheap shot and getting suspended, and a lot of the it definitely showed in the series, and led to some power plays and some goals. So I thought that they had a great game plan against the Lightning. And John Tortorella, who is a bit of a kook, he's kind of crazy, but he's a great coach, and I thought he did a masterful coaching job. Probably the best coaching job of his career, to be honest, against the Lightning.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of skill guys up front on Columbus who probably aren't known for their gritty style of play or anything like that, but to see Duchesne and Panarin and guys like that kind of step up and score goals, but also play physical against Tampa Bay's top guys was awesome. And if they can continue to do that throughout the playoffs, I know they're playing your Bruins, but I think they could go deep. They could go on a nice run here.
Yeah, I definitely don't think the Bruins will go straight. I don't think it'll be an easier road to go through the Blue Jackets with all this momentum. And it's interesting that this is the team that Tortorella won a Stanley Cup with back in 2004. So
yeah, the Lightning. And I've heard things in the media about Tortorella, and guys just love to play for him. I heard he's a hard ass and stuff like that, but
that's true.
He's a player's coach, and that's all that you can really ask for.
Yeah, and I should also mention Sergei Bobrovsky. You got to give credit to him. He had he allowed a 2.0 goals against. He had a 932 save percentage. He played pretty big because obviously when you're going against all that talent, you need a guy to step up as a goaltender. So
yeah, absolutely, and it goes back to that first game. They're down 3-0. He made a couple big saves to keep it at 3-0, and then Columbus turns it around and sweeps them.
All right, then. So hold on one sec. So give me a few seconds. I'm going to have to tear into the Tampa Bay Lightning for a little bit.
Go ahead.
So, all right, then. So, like I said, all the credit in the world to the Blue Jackets. But as for Tampa Bay, I mean, what the heck was this? This was a complete failure on so many parts. I mean, this was Stanley Cup or bust. Going into this season, next year you're going to have free agency. So you knew that going into this year, this was going to be Stanley Cup or bust. And they completely imploded. Not one game. You couldn't win one game. I mean, if you lost at 7 to the Blue Jackets in the first round, it would have been a failure. 6, it would have been a failure. 5, it would have been a failure. You lost at 4. You didn't even show up at all. The Blue Jackets played better, but I mean, even when the Blue Jackets played their best, you need to counter that by playing your best too. And you didn't even have a semblance of your best. I mean, this isn't the standard to win a Stanley Cup. If it's not, and just saying that you just got outplayed, then that just makes you sound like a loser. The Patriots always face every team's best, and they don't look down on their opponent. And that's kind of what I think the Tampa Bay Lightning did. They looked up. They looked down at their opponent, and this might be the biggest failure in sports history. Let's look at teams that made record-setting wins. At least the Patriots, when they went 18-0, went to the Super Bowl. The Warriors, who won 73 games, went to the finals. The Mariners, who won all those games, at least they made it past the first round. And the Red Wings made the conference finals. And let's talk about everybody on that team. So Steven Stamkos didn't do anything. Only had 2 points.
He's lazy.
And was -8. Nikita Kucherov, who's probably going to win MVP, he got 2 points, and he didn't do anything. Actually, I know, he actually did something. He got a cheap shot and was suspended for 1 game. And Brett Pound had only 1 point. And Vasilevsky allowed 3.182 goals and had a 88.56 save percentage.
Boo-hoo.
Yeah, boo-hoo to Vasilevsky. And John Cooper, I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a more uninspired head coach. No adjustments, and decided to say in his press conference that they didn't play any meaningful games, so they lost, and Columbus just wanted it more. So
that's true.
Yeah, so that's your coach, and they signed an extension for him. So whoopee. And like I said before, the cap's coming in next year, so they're not gonna be able to resign everybody. So you had to win this year. This was everybody said on the team, Stanley Cup or bust, and basically they got their butts kicked and got swept in the first round. What a complete failure.
Boo!
And now the Tampa Bay Lightning are the new Capitals for the new chokers of the NHL.
Somebody stop Johnny before he has an aneurysm.
And so now
That's if Johnny then.
Yeah. So now Alex Ovechkin can pass the torch of choking to Steven Stamkos and Nikita Kucherov. Actually, he should pass it to Kucherov because they're both Russian. So, whoopee. So, good job, Tampa Bay Lightning. You are a failure and the biggest chokers in the NHL.
You got punked.
Yeah. So, you guys have anything to say after that?
I mean, no. I feel for the Lightning. Obviously they just could never get their mojo going, and after the year that they had, it was for sure Stanley Cup or bust, and I feel for them.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not I don't know, like they just look really flat and I think they did kind of take the Blue Jackets a little too lightly, especially after getting up 3-0 in game one. But I don't know, like thinking in a historical context, this I don't think I've ever seen anything like this. The level of failure of this team. So why don't we move on to brighter things? Speaking of Blue Jackets and Bruins, so yesterday they played the first game of the series, and my prediction is actually Bruins in 6. I think this will be a 6-game series. It'll be physical.
This game 1.
Yeah, game 1 was yesterday. Game 2, I believe, is tomorrow.
Saturday.
So
yeah.
So I predict this will be a very physical and tough series, but I think the Bruins will pull it out in 6. And so game 1 was yesterday. So in the first period, the Blue Jackets looked a little sloppy. Boston got up to a 1-0 lead. And in the third period, they were able to get I believe a 2-0 lead, and but Columbus was able to fight back. In 13 seconds, they tied the game. And then in overtime, the Bruins were able to get the goal and was able to win the game. And so one thing stands out is Charlie Coyle had a really good game with 2 goals. Tuukka Rask had a pretty good game with 20 saves, and Marcus Johansson had 2 assists. And the Bruins outshot the Blue Jackets 37-22, and hits. Columbus had 40 hits. Bruins had 31 hits. So definitely a very physical. Definitely going to be a very physical series. So what's your guys' thoughts on this series? What do you think is the keys, and what do you think is going to happen?
They need to step up this game because it's a hard team they playing. It's a hard team they playing against.
Yeah, the Blue Jackets are a good team. Well, I watched a bit of game 1 there. I thought the Bruins were all over them early, and then kind of turned it off for a little bit, and then the Jackets had tied it, and I think it'll be a great series again. But if the Jackets can catch fire, who knows? But you say you like the Bruins in 6 as much as I'd like to see the Jackets win. I think the Bruins will take it in probably 7.
Okay, I would not be surprised if this wins 7 games.
Yeah. The old saying is you're never in trouble in a series until you lose at home.
Yeah.
So, Jackets drop game 1, unsurprisingly. Maybe they sneak one out in Boston, which would be huge. But I think the Nationwide Arena in Columbus will be rocking. First second round appearance ever for the franchise, true. And I think they'll be pretty excited.
Yeah, I saw that crowd on YouTube when they beat the Lightning. That place was insane.
And then they had, I think, 6,000 people there for a practice.
Yeah. Later
that week, so it'll be nutty. It'll be fun to watch for sure, and fun for the fans.
I never really thought of Columbus as a hockey town, but I mean they with this upset and them going into the second round, like they really showed up.
Yeah, and I think I saw something. Portnoy was tweeting about it, mocking the Blue Jackets fans and the people of Columbus, saying something along the lines of. I guess there was some newspaper article that they released, like basically explaining hockey to the citizens of Columbus, and Portnoy caught wind of it, and that guy will chirp anybody for anything, so he brought it to light.
Yeah. So I think going into the second game, I think the Bruins need to be tighter defensively and be more physical. I think one thing I'm looking for the Bruins is to be more careful with the puck. I think they should. I think in the Toronto series, when I think at times they were a little sloppy with the puck and they gave it away way too many times. So I think we need to be careful about that. But like I said, I think this will be a very physical series. It would not shock me if we win 6-7 games. I just think the home ice. Okay. I just think the. I think the home ice, and I think just the overall talent of the Bruins is just more than Blue Jackets. So I think the Bruins will win in 6. So actually, let's quickly go over each of the previous series and give me quick thoughts on those. So
okay.
So let's start with you're a Winnipeg Jets fan.
Yeah, huge Winnipeg Jets fan. I'm from Winnipeg originally, and still go back home quite a bit. So
yeah, and unfortunately they lost in I believe 6 games to the St. Louis Blues. And I'll say beforehand, I don't remember this many upsets in NHL, like the playoffs, ever.
No.
In fact, I picked mostly. I picked when I did my NHL playoff picks. I picked mostly favorites, and the only series I got right was Boston. That's it. Everybody else I got wrong. So
no, the Winnipeg series was really bizarre because the Jets were they had home ice advantage. They lost their first 2 at home, won the next 2 on the road, came back to Winnipeg, they lost, and then they lost game 6. Yeah, so they lost in 6. I didn't think Hellebuck was great, Jets goalie. He let in a couple weakies in game 1 and 2, and then I thought he was better as the series went on, but it was just too little too late. Blues goalie Jordan Binnington, I thought he was awesome. A guy I hadn't really heard about. Didn't watch a lot of the Blue Jackets this year, as obviously they're not on a ton here on the East Coast, and they were, I think, the last place team in the West in January. So for them to go on that run is just unprecedented, and we talked about it earlier. Playing meaningful games. They've been in playoff mode for a couple months now, and just looked like they wanted it a couple more, and they just scored such timely goals against the Jets. Couple times they were down in the third, tied it. The one game in game 5 in Winnipeg, Jets were up 2-0. Kevin Hayes has a chance in behind the goalie, misses the puck, and then kind of accidentally knocks it out of harm's way. And then, so it stayed 2-0. Sure enough, in the third, Ryan O'Reilly scores, and then with about 6 minutes left, the Blues score, and then, they score again, I think with, something like 30 seconds left. Jaden Schwartz bats it out of midair. So, just really timely goals and big saves from Jordan Binnington, and, the Jets just didn't want it.
Yeah. Actually, I looked this up. Like, each of the games besides Game 3 was decided by 1 goal. So this was a pretty tight series, even though it only went to 6 games.
Yeah, it was tight, and I just think that, like I said, the timely goals for the Blue Jackets definitely really helped, and the Jets just couldn't overcome that game 5 loss where they gave up 1 late.
That's true.
Yeah. Actually, speaking as a Jets fan, where do you see this team? Like, what do you see this team going forward, and what do you want them to do?
Can I do this?
They got some huge decisions to make in the coming months. They got a lot of guys to sign. You look at Jacob Trouba, Tyler Myers, Kevin Hayes will be a free agent too, and there's going to be some guys that you got to pay. So, I don't know. I think a lot of people in Winnipeg are disappointed because this was the year. This year and last year was kind of, their chance where they had some guys for cheaper than they probably should have, and they know they're going to have to pay guys, so, we'll see. But you never know. Maybe you let go of a guy like, Jacob Trouba, Tyler Myers, and then somebody from the A steps up and, plays big minutes, like a guy like Sammy Niku or somebody like that. So, as tough as it was this year, still optimistic for coming years, and I was hoping for a long run, but didn't happen.
All right, next series. So we mentioned that we kind of referenced this before, Colorado Avalanche versus Calgary Flames. So this series went in 5 games. It kind of seemed like after Game 4, when Colorado was able to come back against the Flames, that they were basically just done. The Flames.
Yeah, and it's crazy because obviously the Flames won the East handily, the West. No, the East. No, they won the West. Sorry, Tampa won the East. And then Colorado barely snuck into the playoffs, and similar to like Columbus, like they just manhandled them, and the Flames never really looked in it. I didn't see the first game where the Flames won, but I watched the games in Calgary once Cale got in there, and watching Colorado is just so much fun. Like guys like Nathan McKinnon and Rantanen, Tyson Barrie, just unbelievable. And then you throw Cale out there, like, I mean, as good as they are this year, they're going to be really, really good in coming years, and a team that I think a lot of hockey fans will want to watch.
Yeah. So, and then next, Vegas versus San Jose. So this was a series that went to 7. The Sharks were down 3-1, and you thought they were just done, but they were able to win 3 straight games and were able to get past the Golden Knights. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that Game 7 was probably one of the craziest hockey games I've ever seen. Vegas goes up 3-0. It's in the third period, and then, kind of a freak accident there. I don't know if you saw it off the draw.
Yeah.
Cody Eakin loses the draw. He kind of shoves Pavelski. Pavelski's falling and then kind of gets pushed down by Paul Stastny and lands on his head. Starts bleeding. Sure enough, they assess Cody Eakin a 5-minute penalty, and the Sharks score 1. And then Couture kind of looks back at the bench. He goes, that's one. And sure enough, they ended up scoring 4. And, Vegas tied late, and then San Jose won it in overtime. But I had heard a story that I guess as soon as they called that 5-minute major, which was a horrible call in my opinion, horrible.
Yeah.
Maybe a 2-minute. But I understand why, because Pavelski's laying on the ice. He's laying on the ice, and, there's blood gushing out of his head. And, the fans are yelling and whatnot, and you can't review these calls. So as the ref, you probably didn't see it he probably wasn't honed in on that. But, and obviously you can't review it. So he sees this blood gushing out of his head, and he sees him laying on the ice, and he figures he's got to call 5 minutes. So, I don't totally blame the ref, but apparently when he took that penalty, Joe Thornton said to the bench, like, we're scoring 3 for Joey, and who's the captain of the Sharks. And somebody said, I think it was Couture, he said when a guy who's played 20 years in the league tells you that, you take it to heart. So it was just an unbelievable game, and I thought Vegas was going to win it in overtime. They had better chances. San Jose doesn't play a ton of guys, so they look pretty gassed. And sure enough, it was Goodrow, I think. Goodrow, yeah, he scored an OT. He's a 4th liner too, so that was awesome. And just the fans there at the SAP Center, the Shark Tank they call it.
The Shark Tank.
The Shark Tank. We're going wild. So it was a great series and lived up to its hype for sure.
Yeah, and then Nashville and the Dallas Stars. So that went 6 games. What's your thoughts on that series?
Yeah, I watched a bit of that one. I think Dallas is... well, first of all, if you told me that there would be a second round without Nashville, without Winnipeg, without Tampa, without Calgary, I'd have called you a liar. Without Washington, too.
I love Nashville.
And, yeah, so Nashville's another team who's, kind of built for the playoffs, and they've, created some waves in the playoffs the last couple of years. And Dallas came in as big underdogs, got into the playoffs late in the season, and, I think that's a team that's dangerous too in Dallas. You look at some of their star players, like a guy like Jamie Benn, a guy like Radulov, Sagan, guys who are super skilled, but can also play those gritty playoff minutes, similar to guys on the Bruins, like their top line. So
yeah.
So I think Dallas could be a team that goes on a run as well.
Yeah. Will, do you have something to say?
Yeah, he's a captain of
PK?
Yeah.
Will's a big PK Subban fan.
Oh, yeah.
Is he the captain? No, I think it's Roman Yossi.
Yeah, I think Yossi's the captain.
Yeah.
Where is Mike Fisher?
He retired.
Yeah,
I think he's retired. I think he kind of retired then came back. I think he retired again. I'm not.
Yeah, because he has a cute wife.
Carrie Underwood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on, Will. This is a sports podcast.
Yeah, we could.
Sorry.
I mean, I don't mind talking about Carrie Underwood for a little bit.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about the last two series in the East. So Pittsburgh and the Islanders. So the Islanders basically kicked the Penguins' butt. They swept them. And this kind of reminded me when remember you mentioned Nashville. This kind of reminded me when the Blackhawks got swept by Nashville, and the Nashville Predators were a much lower seed. And then after that, the Blackhawks were just never the same. I kind of have a gut feeling that this might be the case for. I mean, they still have Crosby, they still have Malkin, but I feel like this kind of shows the Penguins just aren't the same.
Yeah, I mean, the Islanders are a team that's been surprising everybody all year long. I mean, they lost John Tavares, and people thought they were going to be bottom of the barrel, similar to Vegas last year. But, yeah, just a series where the Islanders did a really good job limiting Pittsburgh's top guys. I think guys like Sid and Malkin never really got going.
Yeah.
And Pittsburgh just wasn't deep enough up front, and, it was... just another pretty crazy upset. I think even though the Islanders were the higher seed, it was one of those series where everybody was like, oh, Pittsburgh's going to come out and beat Pittsburgh. Regardless, it's like they're like one of those teams almost like the Golden State Warriors in the NBA. Regardless of what they do during the regular season, you just always figure that they're going to be right in the hunt at the end of the postseason. So I was surprised, and the Islanders, another team who I haven't seen a ton this year, but really impressed with them. Matthew Barzal, he's unbelievable. That guy is a player. And the Islanders just got total team buy-in. You got their fourth line playing huge minutes and, being really effective for them. And, it's happy to see. So, and they were playing at the Coliseum. I guess I heard they're going back to the Barclays Center for round 2. So who knows if that'll have an effect on anything. They're pros, so you'd hope not. You'd hope they're used to the venue changes and stuff like that, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Nashville done?
Yeah, Nashville's out.
Sorry.
Yeah. And I mentioned this before, but Barry Trotz needs to get a ton of credit for what he's done with the Islanders and how they've improved as a defensive team. And and he's given them an identity. He's given them toughness. And I wasn't shocked that the Islanders beat the Penguins. I was a little surprised it was a sweep, but I wasn't exactly shocked. All right, then in the last series, Washington versus the Carolina Hurricanes. So this was probably the second biggest shock, obviously besides Tampa and Blue Jackets. So what's your thoughts on this series?
Yeah, I feel like I've said this about every series, but Carolina, a team who snuck into the playoffs kind of late, last week of the season, and I expected Washington to go deep this year. Thought they had a chance to maybe repeat, but it was a kind of a funny series. The home team seemed to dominate most of the games. It went 2-2, and then the home team won all games until Game 7, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. So just a crazy game. Game 7 I did watch. Caps went up 3-1, and I thought it was done. And then, the Canes battle back. And Justin Williams, I don't know what the numbers are on it, but he's had, the amount of overtime playoff goals or Game 7 goals he's had dating back to when he was with LA is just crazy. For, a veteran third, fourth liner, his numbers in, do or die elimination games in the playoffs are unbelievable.
All right, then. Well, I think that'll be it as far as hockey talk. So I wanted to thank you, Kurt and Will, for being on the podcast. It was a lot of fun, and it was so great talking hockey. So do you have anything to say before you head out?
Go UMass.
Thanks for having us, Johnny. Really appreciate it, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'll see you later, man.
For sure.
Yeah, I'll probably see you Springfest.
Absolutely.
All right, then.
All right, bud. Awesome.
All right, then. Thank you for being here. All right, then. We'll take a
course.
quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about the NBA playoffs with the Celtics. All right, then. Welcome back to J-Ho the Sports Dude, and thank you for listening to my sports podcast. So before we move on to the NBA playoffs, some pretty sad news happened this week. So John Havlicek passed away yesterday. He was 79. And the cause of his death has not been announced, but I think it's reported that it has something to do with Parkinson's disease. But yeah, so a big loss for the Boston Celtics community. And I mean, John Havlicek, I believe he is one of the greatest Celtics of all time. I believe he is the third greatest Celtic who ever lived, behind Russell and Larry Bird. So, and I mean, John Havlicek's resume basically speaks for itself. I mean, the man won 8 championships, was a 13-time All-Star, a 5-time NBA All-Defensive First Team, had 26,395 points in 1,270 games. I think that's still the most points and games played by a Boston Celtic. He was the first player to score 1,000 in 16 consecutive seasons. He's responsible for obviously one of the most iconic plays in Celtic history with Havlicek steals the ball. Havlicek steals the ball! It's all over! So, and one thing that when I learned more about the Boston Celtics and I learned a lot more about John Havlicek was that the man had a motor. I mean, the man, like, a lot of players get gassed and, like, usually in games when they get tired, they don't play as well, and they have to sit down, or it just shows up on the court. That wasn't the case for John Havlicek. John Havlicek played. He played hard. He always played hard, and it rubbed off on his teammates. And John Havlicek was probably the only player that really transitioned the Celtics from the 60s to the 70s to when they were winning all those championships in the 60s to when they were still a consistent NBA force in the 70s. Easily the greatest sixth man of all time in NBA history, without a doubt, and one of the greatest NBA players of all time. Definitely in the top 30, maybe top 20. I might actually put him in the top 20. I mean, Havlicek was a beast, and rest in peace, Hondo. All right, then, why don't we move on to the NBA playoffs? So the Boston Celtics were able to take care of their business against the Indiana Pacers, and were able to sweep them. So after Game 1, which I talked about on the last podcast, the Celtics played Game 2, and they were able to come back in this game. They were down for most of the game. They looked pretty flat. They had a pretty horrible third quarter. In Game 1, the Pacers had, like I said, the worst offensive first quarter I've ever seen. Well, that definitely improved in Game 2. The Pacers scored 29 points in the third quarter and were able to take a lead. But Boston was able to come back. They outscored the Pacers 31-12 in the fourth quarter, and were able to win the game 99-91. Jason Tatum had 26 points, but Kyrie Irving was definitely the star of the game with 37 points. All right, Game 3, they moved on to Indiana, and Boston came out swinging in the first quarter, outscoring the Pacers 41-28, but Indiana responded, outscoring Boston 33-18 in the second quarter, 21-12 in the third quarter, but Boston was able to maintain a lead and take Game 3. They won 104-96. Jaylen Brown had a pretty good game with 23 points. Kyrie Irving had 19 points. Al Horford had 16 points. And Jason Tatum had 18 points. And also, I believe before this game, Al Horford was sick, so we didn't know if he was going to play. But he had a big block in this game that was able to help the Celtics win this game. So good for Al Horford. And next game, Boston was able to complete the sweep, winning 110-106 against the Boston Celtics. It was a pretty close game for a while, but at the end, the Boston Celtics were able to put out the Pacers out of their misery and win this series. Gordon Hayward had 20 points, so this was a really good showing for Gordon Hayward. The bench really showed up in this game. Marcus Morris had 18 points. Terry Rozier had 11 points. So the bench, the real story of this game was the bench. Jaylen Brown had 13 points. Kyrie Irving had 14. Jason Tatum had 18. Al Horford had 14. So really good performance by the Boston Celtics, especially the bench. So I think looking at this series, Boston Celtics, offensively they weren't exactly overwhelming, but defensively I really liked what I saw. I feel like this is more of a cohesive team than many points of the season. I really like the rebounding. I thought they maybe turned the ball over a little too much, so I think that can definitely improve. And I think they could be a little more consistent as far as stretches, because like they allow like points a lot. They allow teams to get back through stretches. All right then. So why don't we go into the Milwaukee Bucks, who they play next? So the Celtics play the Milwaukee Bucks in the next series, and the stats definitely seem to favor the Milwaukee Bucks. So as far as offense is concerned, Milwaukee was 1 in points, scoring 118.1 points a game. The Celtics were 14th with 112.4 points per game. Bucks were first in defensive rating with 104 to 0.9 compared to the Celtics, who were 6th with 107. Bucks were third in field goal percentage with 47.6%, and the Celtics were 14th with 46.5%. This is some of the stats that do favor the Celtics. Celtics in three-point percentage were 7th with 36.5%, and the Bucks were 15th with 35.3%. Celtics were in three-throw percentage were 4th in 80.2. Bucks were 14th with 77.3. So most of the stats favor the Bucks, even though when you look at stats, they're only off by a few points. So take that for what it's worth. In the regular season, the Boston Celtics lost 2 games to the Bucks and won 1 game. I remember that first game. It was a pretty intense game. A lot of threes in that game against the Bucks, and the second game was a blowout by the Bucks, but the third game was a pretty close nail biter by the Buccaneers, and they were the Bucks. I meant the Bucks to win that game. So, looking at the series, there are a few keys that the Celtics need to do to win this game. They need to hit the threes. They're a better 3-point percent. I think they're a better 3-point shooting team than the Bucks. So take advantage of that and hit your 3-pointers. Make your free throws and be aggressive in the paint, because the Bucks are not as good a free throw shooting team as Boston. So I believe the Celtics need to be aggressive. Limit the turnovers, because what really made the games closer against the Pacers were the turnovers, and I really feel like they need to limit the turnovers, and they need to be as flawless as they can against the Bucks to beat them. Also, I think the Celtics need to limit Chris Middleton and Eric Bledsoe from making a big impact. I mean, Giannis is going to be Giannis. He's going to put up at least 25 and 27 points per game. I mean, obviously you don't want him to explode and get like 50 points, but Giannis is just going to do what Giannis does. Every game that the Celtics have lost to the Bucks, or at least every game I can remember with the Celtics and the Bucks, Chris Middleton has had a big impact, and he has made these games crazy. So I think you need to limit Chris Middleton and Eric Bledsoe in order to make games go in the Celtics' favor. So looking at this series, a lot points to the Bucks winning this series, and the way I look at the Bucks is they're basically Indiana except with offense. Indiana didn't have any offense, the Bucks do, and both teams were great defensively. But I think the Celtics, with their playoff experience and with Kyrie Irving, who will always show up in the clutch, I think as long as the Celtics are able to make the games close, I trust the Celtics more than I trust the Bucks to close out games and win tight games, and that's what I expect from these games. I expect games to be tight, and I expect the Celtics playoff experience to overwhelm the Bucks. And I think the Celtics need to win one game in the first 2 games in Milwaukee to bring the home field advantage to Boston. So, or home court. So my prediction is Celtics in 7. Obviously it would not shock me if the Bucks won this series at all, but I believe Boston, with their experience, can beat the Bucks. All right, then. Why don't we move on to the Red Sox? All right, so the Red Sox so they came into Yankee Stadium to play the Yankees, and it was a disaster. Game 1 was awful. The Red Sox lost 8-0. Sale was pitching, and he looked awful. The offense was garbage. The pitching was garbage. James Paxton, to his credit, looked really good. So give the Yankees all their props. But the Red Sox in this game, they just took a giant poop on the field, and the Yankees pooped all over the Red Sox. Game 2, the Red Sox looked better, but the bullpen decided to blow the game. So Eovaldi had a very good game, but in the 7th, the Red Sox allowed a grand slam from Brett Gardner, which put the Yankees on top 5-3, and so they unfortunately lost that game. So disappointing 2 games against the New York Yankees, but living to fight another day. Next, the Red Sox played the first place Tampa Bay Rays, and they were actually able to sweep them. The games were close, but the Red Sox were able to get the job done. Eduardo Rodriguez pitched game 1. He pitched fine. He pitched okay. The Red Sox scored 3 runs in the 5th. Actually, Tampa Bay was up 2-0, I believe, at that point, and the Red Sox were able to score 3 runs in the 5th and get a run in the 6th, but the Tampa Bay Rays got 2 runs in the 6th as well, and the Red Sox were able to were able to get 2 runs in the 8th to win the game. Betts and Moreland hit home runs in the 8th, and they were able to win that game. Game 2, Rick Porcello pitched, and whenever Rick Porcello pitches, I get a little worried, but it wasn't too bad. The Red Sox scored 5 runs in the 2nd inning. Rays scored a run, then scored a run in the 4th, and then scored 2 runs in the 7th and in the 8th. But the Red Sox were able to get a run in the 9th, and Vasquez was actually able to get a pick off of Pham in the 9th to end the game, so that was pretty exciting. Benny hit a grand slam in the 2nd, so big game for Benintendi. Game 3, David Price pitched fine. Tampa Bay scored 2 runs in the 3rd. Red Sox were able to get a run in the 4th, get 2 runs in the 6th, and then and Tampa Bay did get a run in the 8th to tie the game. But then in overtime, extra innings, the Red Sox were able to get a run off a Vasquez sacrifice fly in the 11th inning. And then after that, the Red Sox were just able to win the game. And let's go into the Detroit series. So game 1, Sale pitched and was okay, but the bullpen kind of blew the game. So the Red Sox got up to a 2-0 lead, and then Detroit scored in the 4th, 5th, 6th, and then Red Sox were able to get a run, but Detroit scored 8 runs in the 8th and 1 run in the 9th, and the Red Sox were just never able to mount a comeback. So 7-4 Tigers. Game 2, back-to-back after a rain delay the day before, so they essentially had to play back-to-back games. Hector Velasquez pitched, and the bullpen was okay, but the offense just really couldn't do enough. They were able to get 9 hits, but they just couldn't get enough runs. Detroit scored 3 runs in the 4th, 9 runs, 1 run in the 9th. Boston scored a run in the 7th and 8th, but they just, the bullpen, they did allow 12 hits, so it wasn't completely perfect, but it just, I don't know, it was just underwhelming performance by the Red Sox. Game 3, Eduardo Rodriguez pitched for 6 innings. The Red Sox got up to a 2-0 lead, then 4-0, and then the Detroit was able to get a run. But then in the 8th inning, the Red Sox offense completely exploded, and they scored 7 runs to essentially put the Tigers out of their misery. Detroit did score 3 runs in the 9th, but it really wasn't enough. JD Martinez had a big game with 3 hits, and so definitely a big game for the Red Sox. Game 4, Rick Porcello pitched and got his first win of the year, and probably his best pitching performance so far this year. So Red Sox scored 2 runs in the 2nd, 3 runs in the 3rd, while the Detroit did score 3 runs in the 3rd. Red Sox were able to get a run in the 4th, a run in the 6th, and that was it, and they were able to win 7-3. Michael Chavis was able to hit a home run, and we'll talk about. And speaking of Michael Chavis, also this week, Blake Swihart was traded for Michael Chavis, and so Michael Chavis had a pretty good first impression for the Red Sox, so hopefully he can make an impact on this team. Starting pitching has improved, but can be better and needs to be more consistent. Bullpen is starting to worry me a little bit. They seem like they're allowing a lot of runs and blowing some games. But, it has shown up at times, but for the most part, they're starting to worry me. Offense has been much better. Mookie Betts has played a lot better. Benintendi and JD Martinez have also been playing really well to lead the offense. You would hope that sweeping Tampa Bay would boost the Red Sox because they were the first place team in the division and they swept them. But they played the Tigers and really didn't seem to do anything. It was kind of 50-50. They lost 2 games and they won 2 games. So, like I said before, I want this team to go back to 500 and then they can improve from there. Because right now they're not at 500. So, let's get to that and then we can see where this team goes from there. Next, they play the Rays again, and so that should be a lot of fun. And hopefully they can put the Rays down a peg again and get to 500, and then hopefully they can get close to getting the top of the division. All right, then, why don't we move on to the Patriots? So this week, the Patriots released their 2019 regular season schedule. So good for the Patriots, the 6-time Super Bowl champions. So why don't we go into each of the games, and I'll just list off the teams that the Patriots are playing. So, and I'll just tell you some games that really stick out to me. So, game 1, they play the Steelers. Then they play the Dolphins. Then they play the Jets. Then they play the Bills. Then they play the Redskins. And then they play the Giants on a Thursday night football. Then Monday Night Football, they play the Jets. And then Sunday afternoon game, they play the Cleveland Browns. Sunday Night Football, they play the Baltimore Ravens. Then they get a bye week. And then they play the Philadelphia Eagles around at 4:25 on Sunday. And then they play the Cowboys the week after, basically the same time. And then they play the Texans Sunday Night Football. And then they play the Chiefs in a AFC Championship rematch at 4:25 on Sunday. Then they play the Bengals. And then they play the Bills, and I think that game is to be announced. And then they play the Miami Dolphins to finish the season. So, the way I look at it, after the Steelers, the season gets a lot easier as far as the first few games. I can see the Patriots getting off to a pretty hard start at the beginning of the year. Like, the Steelers are, even though they lost a lot of pieces, I still expect them to be a competitive, tough team. But after that, they play the Dolphins, Jets, Bills, Redskins, Giants, and Jets, who I don't really think are that good. So I expect them to have a very good record after that time. Then after that, it gets a little tricky. Then there's a stretch in which the Patriots really need to show how good they are. There's like about a 6-game stretch in which they play a lot of really tough teams, from the Browns to the Ravens to the Eagles to the Cowboys to the Texans and to the Chiefs. And so those games will really show how good this Patriots team are. If they can get through that stretch without losing a lot, then it will really show how that the Patriots are still Super Bowl contenders and aren't going anywhere. Hopefully, right now I'm thinking the Patriots will win 12, either between like 11 and 13 wins. That's kind of how I see this Patriots team. I think they're still the front runner in the AFC, and I think this schedule, it's manageable. It really I think also the last 3 games are kind of a what. I think they'll handle those pretty well. So I think the Patriots, it starts out pretty easy, then it gets a little hard in the middle, and then at the end it's a little pretty easy again. But I think this is a pretty tough. This is a pretty even schedule for the Patriots. All right then, why don't we go into some quick stories? So quick stories is basically stories that I don't have a lot to say about, but I should mention them because they're the biggest stories of the week. So why don't we go into these stories right now? So as far as the other series, so basically most of the series in the NBA are over with exception of a few. Milwaukee swept Detroit, like you already know. Boston swept Indiana. Philly beat Brooklyn 4-1. A pretty physical series. The last game was, they destroyed them, but definitely very physical. A lot of trash talk and some fights. Toronto beat Orlando in 5 games and are moving on to play Philadelphia. Houston beat Utah in 5 games and are moving on. Portland beat Oklahoma City in 5 games, and that last shot by Damian Lillard. And this don't look good for Westbrook or Paul George's legacy. San Antonio and Denver are tied 3-3, so we'll get a Game 7, and definitely the best series in the playoffs so far. And we'll see how they go from there. Golden State and Clippers, my goodness. The Clippers were able to come back from 31 against Golden State in Game 2, and they were able to win Game 5, and so they wouldn't go down lightly. This Clippers team isn't going to go out lightly. And Golden State, they better put them out tonight, because it ain't going to look good for them if they go to Game 7. Also, last night was the NFL Draft. Unfortunately, I couldn't watch it because I was watching Avengers Endgame. But, definitely a pretty interesting draft. So, the first 3 picks weren't exactly shocking. Kyler Murray going number 1, not shocking. San Francisco taking Nick Bosa, not shocking. The Jets taking Quinn Williams, not shocking. Oakland taking Clinton Farrell at 4 was a bit of a shock. But, I think that was a bit of a reach, but whatever. And it wasn't the biggest shock of the night. Tampa Bay taking Devin White, sure. The Giants at 6. Oh my God. So at 6, the Giants. Josh Allen was on the board. Ed Oliver was on the board. Devin Bush was on the board. And guess who the Giants took? Daniel Jones. Oh, and Dwayne Haskins was on the board. And then the Giants took Daniel Jones as their quarterback. Why? Okay, first of all, I understand why you took a quarterback, because Eli Manning is just not the same, and his time is running out, so you need a successor. Even though I don't know if I was completely sold on taking a successor in this draft, because I don't think this was a particularly strong quarterback draft, but I don't really understand what the Giants are doing, because if you're rebuilding by taking a quarterback, why aren't you why is Eli Manning still there? And if you want to win with Eli Manning, then shouldn't you get him help? Because the Giants roster stinks. Their defense is awful. They got rid of Odell Beckham Jr. And still not sold on that Giants offensive line. So I don't really get what the Giants' plan is here. I'm guessing they don't have a plan. Whatever. And also, Daniel Joseph apparently has ties to the Manning family, so that's nice. And speaking of quarterbacks, I mean, why'd you take Daniel Jones? I mean, from what I've read from experts, like, he was probably the fourth best quarterback in this draft, behind Haskins and Kyler Murray and Drew Lock. Like, if you took Dwayne Haskins, this would still be confusing, and I wouldn't understand what the Giants are doing, but it would make a little more sense. But Daniel Jones, like, there were reports that this guy probably wasn't even a first rounder. I heard he probably was a second round, third round quarterback, and like I heard this guy probably is a career backup. Like, what are the Giants doing taking this guy? I really don't. I don't know what Dave Gettleman's doing. So Jaguars took Josh Allen at 7th. T.J. Hawkinson, which is the best tight end in this draft, went to Detroit. Ed Oliver went to the Bills at 9, and Steelers took Devin Bush. The Patriots at 32nd took N'Keal Harry, wide receiver from Arizona State. So definitely fills a need for the Patriots. I heard this guy, he's a very good route runner. His weakness lies in his speed, but I like the pick. I think it definitely addresses a need for the Patriots, which is wide receiver. All right, let's get into some other quick stories. So, Rob Gronkowski dented the Lombardi Trophy using it as a bat. This is the most Gronk story ever. I mean, wow. So, in baseball, Tim Anderson of the White Sox bat flipped after hitting a home run, and then he got drilled on the next at bat. And so, I believe the pitcher was suspended for 5 games. Tim Anderson was suspended 1 game for, I think, saying a racial slur. And this bat flip caused a bench brawling. So I think the Tim Anderson slur thing, that's a separate issue. I can understand why baseball did that. However, drilling him for doing a bat flip, like, I've always had a problem with baseball and their unwritten rules in which they attack people because they celebrate. I mean, there's just nothing more whiny and petty and pathetic looking than drilling a guy just because he celebrated. How about, you know how you get revenge? You strike the guy out. Like, how pathetic is it that you have to drill a guy for celebrating because you screwed up? Do you want to know how you shut him up? Don't allow a home run. Like, this is my problem with baseball. Like, they don't allow their players to celebrate. They don't allow their players to have personality. And so, with these unwritten rules in which the players have no personality and act like robots, and they're supposed to just be nice to each other, and, like, that's boring. Nobody wants to see that. So, I mean, and other sports, you're allowed to celebrate. Like, you are allowed to celebrate in a hyper way after making a big play. In football, wide receivers, I mean, not to an extent, can celebrate after scoring a touchdown. Quarterbacks can celebrate after throwing a touchdown. Defensive players can celebrate after getting a sack. When you get a goal in the NHL, you can celebrate as you want. In basketball, you hit a shot, you can celebrate, even though you have to do it quick because you need to get back on defense. But after you hit a game winner, you can celebrate. So I really just don't really get this at all. Also in the news, Russell Wilson became the highest paid player in the NFL. He got a 4-year, $87.6 million contract. So, is Russell Wilson the best player in the NFL? No, he's not. I believe he's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. And I think this contract, I mean, this is how the way contracts work. Your contract's up, and if you have the leverage against your team, you get the highest, you become the highest paid at your position. So, good for Russell Wilson, and I think he deserves it. So, hopefully let's see if the Seahawks can bounce back and compete for another Super Bowl. All right, and last story. So Tyreek Hill, there was an audio release of Tyreek Hill and his fiance talking to each other about his son's broken arm and how he potentially abused his son. And Tyreek Hill currently is barred from any Chiefs activities after this recording has been released. I mean, when's enough with this guy? I mean, before he was drafted, he beat up his wife, who I believe was pregnant. We had more stories about him and domestic abuse. And like, at what point? I mean, obviously the NFL is going to punish him, and they need to punish him hard. And the Chiefs are no stranger to controversies with abuse with Kareem Hunt this year. So, I mean, at what point is enough with this guy? I mean, at what point? I mean, he's a great player, but at what point is the distraction and the cases just a bit too much? I'm predicting right now Tyreek Hill is probably not going to last more than 4 years in the NFL. I'm really starting to get sick of this guy. All right, then. Thank you for listening to J-Ho, the Sports Dude. And next week, we'll have more sports content. And we'll see how the Bruins do against the Blue Jackets and the Celtics do against the Bucks. And let's hope the Red Sox can continue to win. And thank you for Kurt and Will for being on the podcast. That was a lot of fun to do. And thank you for listening to J-Ho, the Sports Dude, and I'm out.